Hi everyone, welcome to our second masterclass today, and our focus is still Logic auditors. So I'll just give 30 seconds if we've got any stragglers, and then we'll get started straight away. Okay, I'm again have the great privilege to have Anna with me today, probably the expert in our Logic auditor, apart from those guys that built it. So really happy to have Anna here today to take us through more details about what this new functionality can offer. So again, thanks for being with us, Anna.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Before we start and kick it off, we'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we all meet today and pay our respect to elders past and present. As you can see, we've got the May webinar series landing page on screen, and we're gonna be going through those things. So our structure has changed a little bit from what it was last year, where we focus on a theme for the month. And this month it's great that we have a new feature or an improved register that we can showcase. So the first webinar was all about introducing you to the new Logic Auditor. This session will focus on start to finish, and then in the feature and focus, we'll work on how to build those audit tools. So just a reminder, this is recorded and we will share the recordings with you. Please share it with your staff and your team and anyone you think could benefit from having a look. If you need any support or you have any questions about this, support goes to support@logic.com.au. Anything else, you can email us at customersuccess@logic.com.au. This will also be on the Academy, and you'll of course receive it in your mail out. So let's get started. Okay, so Anna's in the hot seat again today, which is great, and I'm going to ask her a few questions. So Anna, last week we had a look at this wonderful full new functionality that we had more broadly, and we showcased what we can do with Logic Auditor. From you can build your own templates and how all of those things can be linked to the standards, and you can do the check online, which is really great. Today, can you please show us how we go through that process? So how would we schedule a brand new audit?
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I'll just acknowledge that I'm speaking from Gubbi Gubbi country. And for those who don't know that country, that's on the north coast of the Sunshine Coast, the north coast of Brisbane. Okay, so we're looking at scheduling an audit. Was that the question, Elizabeth?
Yeah, yes, please.
Yep. Anna. Okay. All right, I'll just share my screen and take you to the audit register, which everyone knows. Might just come in again. Obviously, I don't know my password. That's great. Great, there it is. Not sure why it didn't recognize Georgina.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that's a problem. It was just working. I think I might have. I've got another one open, so luckily, I'll just move that. Come back to here. Yeah, great. I'm already in as Georgina. Sorry about that, everyone. Over here, we're on the audit register, and it's similar to what you normally experience. I think the button might have moved to up here, and we're going to. Oops. It's going to give me that problem. Right. That is a problem. So something's happened with that site. We might not have told our dev team that we were working on it for the webinar. Let me just see what I can do. I think I can go to Shortland Street. It's not exactly what I wanted because I had everything set up on the other site. Great. All right, okay, so I want to now go to the audit register and I want to schedule an audit. So in the first instance here, I want to give it a name, and I'm just going to check because on the other side I've got other tools and I'd already worked out what I was going to be showing. So I'm just going to see what audit tools I've got. Sorry about this, guys. So these are the audits. Oops, I'm really thrown by this experience. Okay. All right, well, we're going to be doing the 8134 complaints and feedback audit tool. So I'm hoping that, yep, okay. So I'm going to call it the complaints and feedback audit tool. So that's my name. And everything here is exactly as you would expect. In this instance, it's a compliance, so we're looking to sort of make sure that we comply with the requirements. It's going to be internal. You can see when I picked here as audit tool, I can pick the actual tool online. For those of you who want to do a phased approach, you can still schedule audits using your audit tools that you would have on the document register. But if you're using an online tool, this list here will provide you with all of the ones that you've developed online. And you can see I've picked that 8134, which is a New Zealand standard. You can set your own benchmark for a pass rate. And in this instance, it's auto selected 90. I think that's when whoever developed the tool actually set that as a pass rate. Again, as you would have for your typical scheduler now, you can link it to a contract. You can see these are all contracts, and let's just say that we're going to link it to a particular contract. I'm dealing with, okay. Okay, so let's say that we're just for this particular contract, only to demonstrate it. And the instructions, I had developed on the other one some really good instructions for an online audit, but I haven't got that. So I'm just going to look for something that I could use. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this feature, you can develop the instructions at the back end and just auto select it. So I'm going to select this one, but I'm going to change the instructions. And the first one is I'm going to say notate any significant findings. I can't even spell notate at this point. Notate significant findings or observations, I'll just say. 2, I think it's always important when you're doing an audit that you say to the auditor that if they note anything that's significant, that they always tell someone, that they don't leave it as just as a as something that's on the tool itself. If it's critical, it should go through a much faster process of advising, which is verbal. So verbally notify your line manager of significant findings. And 3, always, I think, if you've notified anything, give consideration. I'll just make it really short, but I would be saying give consideration to how you could address, how we can address significant issues, issues identified through the audit. And thank God the browser has a spell check. And so we can move on. Sorry, I had all of that set up. Schedule, as you would expect, we want this done every quarter with the next one due on the 30th. We want to give the auditor 30 days or 10 days or 14 days to do it. So it gives them 2 weeks and 1 week for the approving officer. So I'll just bring that back so it's it's due now. And the frequency, let's say that we want that every 6 months. So we'll just push that to 6 months and press OK. And now we want to assign it to someone. Clementine's our quality officer. She will do it. The approval officer will be our quality manager. And the business area it relates to, let's say it relates to quality, but it could relate to that mental health if that was our service. Remember, that was the contract I attached it to. But let's just say quality and risk, and we want it onto the, let's say, the clinical review meeting. Access control, let's say we want everyone to be able to see it, and we press the submit button. I'm just hoping
Sorry. Before we move on to how you would actually now do that audit, is there a with the Logic Auditor and the fact that we're doing an online audit, is there a difference in who we can assign as the action officers?
Absolutely, Elizabeth, great question. The person that you can assign if you're doing an online audit has to be somebody who has got an auditor seat, which is a special permission which can be assigned to either an action officer or an approval officer. Now, in terms of when I've just gone through that process of scheduling the audit, I don't need an auditor seat. And as a manager, I do not need to, at the close stage of the audit, I do not need an auditor seat. The only person who needs an auditor seat is the person who's conducting an online audit.
Okay. And when you purchase Logic Auditor, there's 5 auditor seats in your package. Is that correct?
That's right. So there's 5 already given to you, and each one that you can buy is just an extra $5 per month.
Great. But we can still see that our task instructions, even though we're using an online audit tool, those task instructions of the process is still really vitally important, right? We still have to follow that.
Yeah, I think those ones are really broader when you're using them. So you're talking about the instructions that that you get. They'll be broader than what you'll get inside the audit tool.
Right.
Yep. So I'm on the audit tool. Just while we're talking to Elizabeth, I moved over to the audit and I actually found the audit that we want to do and now we want to conduct it. So I'm just going to click that button over here and you can see that this is the audit tool. I won't go through all of it, but when we're setting these tools up for you, we'll give you an example of what is the purpose of this audit, what context it would usually be provided in, what's the scope of the audit. These would all make sense to somebody who is in New Zealand and using for 8134. This would be very familiar. We've also referenced the relevant legislation as well as the standards, and also pointed out some of the notes to the auditor that some of the things that they need to be thinking about. I won't go through any of those, of course. And then you can see that we've got the audit instructions. So these ones are different to the audit instructions that Elizabeth just referred to. The other one I'm saying, sort of just broadly saying, hey, give consideration to making recommendations, make observations where you identify issues. They are out broad, but these ones inside the audit tool can be more specific. So let's complete an audit. Remembering you can do this on your phone and you can see that you can just self-select through the drop down. So we've got the 14th, the name of the auditor. I'm logged in, I think, as, well, let's say it's Clementine. I can't remember Clementine's last name. And the facility here, you can just, we've made it a free text field. So, let's say C1, just to make it fast. Now we've got the actual questions and you can see that all you're needing to do is read the questions. You can, when you're designing your tool, put help hint text in. I won't go through these individually because we're not really looking at the content of this audit, but just looking at the process of how to complete it. So I'm just going to randomly select and I'm going to say yes to that question, let's say, and no to this question. And because I've said no, I really should make an observation. And my recommendation is that if this is really nice and clear, let's use that as part of what we're saying. So complaint acknowledged. So let's say wasn't addressed. So let's say I don't know how we're going to identify that, but I've picked a bad one as an example, but wasn't addressed in accordance with the code. So let's just say that and press OK. I think what in this instance, we're looking at a record, so that would have been easy to identify. But you can see how quickly you can make observations if you're using the text from up here. If it's not applicable, you've got that option. In this instance, if you wanted to take an image of something, you can use this here. If you're using it from mobile, you'll get the benefit of the functionality of the mobile, which will allow you to use the camera. Otherwise, you can use a drag and drop. So what you're doing is effectively moving through each of these questions and answering them. And so if they're yes, it's straight up. If it's a no, remember, you'll just take that recommendation and make it as an observation. So did not show. You can see how quickly you can just reverse it out. There are only observations. You can make, of course, additional comments, but I'm just trying to move quickly through this process. And let's say the rest are all yes, we've got the picture. Let's make a recommendation. Let's now view the recommendations. So at this stage, what it's done is it's picked up on the 2 observations that I've made, and it's giving me the option. It's not mandatory, but it's given me the option to add a recommendation. Think about this. After I've made this recommendation, this audit is done. So I've got the complaint wasn't acknowledged in accordance with the code, and the documentation didn't show the cultural safety was respected. So I'm going to suggest that we schedule training for our frontline staff on the appropriate process, appropriate cultural. I can't. For responding to complaints. Okay, so I, as an auditor, have done my job. If I just press submit, let's view the report. Now, I could do many records, so I could be looking at multiple records, but what I can show here is that we've audited one item. So let's say that was one record. We set the benchmark at 80%. The actual score was 80%. So in this instance, the audit actually failed. So that's the issue. In terms of critical issues, we'll be talking about this next week, but when you're setting up an audit tool, you can identify particular questions that are regarded as critical, and you can specify whether they, if in this instance, if I pressed things like part met or not met, it flagged them as critical issues. So now it's giving them a response. And if I come down to here, it's now going to show the recommendations. And I should have mentioned that you can actually add multiple recommendations. You don't just have to have the one. The rest of the report is really about the metadata from the report. So it's just giving us date, time, and who did it, for instance, and then the individual response. If I click out of that and say that I want to conduct a second audit, which I'm not going to do, but I'm just going to show you that if you had to, let's say you had to do a sample size of 12 records, then you're going to be pressing that button 12 times and simply opening up the next record and going through that question again. One of the things that you might want to do when you build out the audit tool is actually, rather than just have facility, you might want to have the unique identifier of the client record so that you can trace back as to which record was actually audited. So, but just to say to you that is really conducting an audit, and you can see I could possibly just go through. What I'll do for this one, just to demonstrate that, is I'll really quickly go through and just say that I've done this one. And this one I'm just gonna make it really simple and say that everything was passed. So this is C2, just to make it different. And in this instance, I'm only either going to go for a yes or a not applicable, and I'm not going to go for a no, so I don't have to make the recommendations, just to demonstrate to you what it looks like if you do too. So I don't need to do any recommendations, everything's there, and let's now submit that anyway. Good, it was just really a prompt. You can see now, if we look back over here, we can do 2, and we can see that we've actually done, it's on 2 occasions. And if we now look at the report, it's accumulated the data across both. So we've done 2 audits, 90%. The average score is here, but it'll still distinguish that the first audit failed and the second one actually passed, as we indicated. And so if we look down here, we can still see the responses to the critical questions. So here we've got that on that critical question, it was a no, and on the others, all the others were yeses. Coming down again, you'll just see that it's going to give you the response to both of the items. So the report will just accumulate the data as you complete more and more items. So let's move out of that. And Now let's go to the action field here, and I think here it's actually, I can say now I have completed my task. I don't want to make a progress note. I'm just going to complete the task, and let's say I conducted a sample of 2 records, and let's say that was all I was asked to do, a sample of 2 records. And it's up to you what you put in here. I'm going to just say 1 passed and 1 failed, and submit that. And that's really like, for instance, when you're doing now, you can just say that you've completed a task. So I'm submitting that. So it's moved away from me now. That's me done. And you can see now that the workflow is now at the review and close stage. So think about what you're doing now. We're all downloading documents, completing things, making recommendations, and all of that work. We don't need to do that anymore. We can just simply do the whole thing online. And when we're moving to review and close, now we're at this next stage. So I'm just going to ask Elizabeth, do you have a question, Elizabeth, for me, or from our attendees at this stage before I move?
No, my next question was what would it look like from that approval side? So how are they going to review and close? But that's exactly where you are right now. And then I have some more questions about if some of these questions were really critical when we think about some of the evidence that we have to present in our standards. How can we make sure that we reflect that in our accreditation standards?
Right. Okay. Well, I'll just show. I'll go back to this. Close this one off as that manager. So just think about this as if you're managers and you're having to close these audits. When you're coming down here, it's all on this drawer now that's coming out from the right-hand side. You can see what action's been taken. You can see that comment I made. So it's all just on one page. And if you want to review the audit findings, you can click here. So that's going to take us to the recommendations in these panels here. That's really helpful. One of the things as an approval officer now, we've added an extra step which says you can acknowledge. And if you want to acknowledge, which you either have to convert it to action or acknowledge it or do both, but you have to do one of these. So if you only want to acknowledge it and you don't want to take any action, you'll just select that option only. If you also then want to say, well, I not only want to acknowledge the what Clementine has said, but I also want to convert it to action. And again, what's great, if we've got this here that says, hey, this is, and I agree with that, I would say, great, good, I agree. And I'm going to now convert that to action. And so I'm saying this is really, I think it's corrective action. It's not preventative action. I'm sure we would have had procedures in the organisation that said this is how you should manage complaints. And now I want to give it to someone, and just for ease, I'm going to give it to Georgina, our quality manager, and I want that done by the end of the month, and I want that open. So what I've done now is, as the person who's signing off on the audit, is that I've actually turned a recommendation into an action. So again, really simplifying that process where outcomes coming from audits can be translated into things that need to be done. In the past, we had to go over to the improvement register. Now it's all integrated into the audit register. Press save. I've completed that next step. And now I'm back over on that approve stage, and I'm wanting to sign off on this. So I've reviewed the actions. I don't want to sign any other tasks. You can see that I can do that, and now I can close the audit and I can submit it. So there's the process. You can, I think, for anybody who currently uses the standard option of downloading the tool, conducting it offline, uploading it, making the recommendations, attaching them to the approval register, and then for those who are managing audits, having to go and look at those approvals and then make suggestions of how they go forward. You can see for both the auditor and the approval officer, we have really slimmed down, streamlined the steps. All in conversation, all that design was all done in conversation with a number of clients, and a whole range of feedback that's come to us over the years about, why can't it do it this way? Well, there it is. So Elizabeth, just remind me of your question.
I have 2 other questions. One is, if I'm not using an audit template, are we still able to complete audit findings and results? So that's if you're using a manual one, you can still do that. And then I just,
Yep. Absolutely. So you'll see even in Shortland Street, if we just take that filter away, that some of these audits here are still the old paper-based ones. So when I come over to here, it's actually giving me the download option. So it's all very much, so you've got choices of either using the download option or the in-app.
And then there's just a clarification. The person that's asking the question is saying, so actions are no longer recorded in the improvement register?
You've got choices that if you want to, you can convert them to the improvement register, or you can actually just manage them. The reason why we gave the option of putting them in here is that if you think about it, over on the improvement register, when you add an improvement, I'll just go there just to sort of show what I'm about to say. When you put an improvement in, you've got to describe the issue and why you're doing this. If effectively the description of the issue is the observation that you've made through the audit, and there isn't any reason why it shouldn't. So what we've said is you can still use this, you can still convert recommendations and from the audit register to the improvement register, or you can actually just say, well, I've already gone through this step as identifying what the issue is. It was identified through an audit. It is a compliance requirement, and this is the recommendation that's over on the audit tool, so I don't need it to do that. So this whole process of drafting all of this is all really part of the audit, and then coming to here and then saying how we're actually going to manage it, assign action. All of this is really could be managed just within the audit tool. The benefit of it is if we're over here on the audit tool, and if we look at that complaints one, so just look at that complaint that we just did. I think it's in this schedule because it hasn't moved into the in progress. I jumped the queue. If we have a look at it, if you want, there are the improvements. So it's still got full integration. So if you want to, you can still do what you want to do, which is add that button there. But if you want to take the easier step, you can just say, well, these are the recommendations that have come out of the audit.
Right.
Yep.
Thanks for that clarification, Anna. My question was if I wanted to show evidence that we're really looking at some of these things very deeply in our audit processes that relate to our standards, is there a way that I can link those better than what we're doing now currently when you link the entire audit?
Yes, absolutely. So if I actually go out to admin mode and just simply go over to one of the audit tools, and let's have a look at that that same tool that we just looked at. When we're coming down to 8134, if we were looking at this and we wanted to link it to a standard, we can say that this is linked to, sorry, I haven't got 8134 on this drop-down list here, but let's say it was the Australian Hospital Standard by way of comparison, and we can scroll down here and we can say this is linked to that. So now that question on the audit tool of NZ8134 really should be linked to NZ8134 and the corresponding criteria in the standard. Once we do that, what will happen is that if we've got 8134 activated on our accreditation register on 1.02, it will provide the results of every time we've conducted this audit against this question.
Wow. Thanks, Anna. That's really great. We just had another confirmation. Simon was not clear on the audit licenses, who gets one, and if you need one to complete the audit. So just if you can just reiterate what you said earlier about the audit seats, please.
Yeah, so Simon, the audit seats are for, you can assign an audit seat to anybody who has an action license or an approval license. So that license is only required for the stage in the audit that relates to conducting the audit. So we haven't said for if you want to schedule an audit, which is typically an approval license, it doesn't matter whether you have an audit seat or not. And if you're closing off on the audit and you need an approval license, but you do not need an auditor seat. The only person who needs the permission, the audit seat permission level, is the person who's conducting the audit.
And you can move those auditor seats from one person to the next?
Yeah, you
if
can
you
move
needed
them.
to?
Yep, you can go into permissions and move them around, certainly.
Okay. Well, Anna, thank you. Thank you so much for taking us through that. It's certainly a much easier and quicker process, especially if you've got a range of different things to do. I think of those who need to do vehicle checks or first aid checks, and there's 10 or 20 things that you have to do. And it's really clear around the auditor seats, and we can see why we've got the 5 that are included in the package. We don't have any other questions for you, so I think we can close our meeting there. If anyone does think of anything that they want to say, please either pop it in the chat or send us an email at customersuccess@logic.com.au. And just a reminder, next week we will be looking in detail into the feature and focus, which is the audit templates and how you can build your own. So I'm sure everyone will join me in thanking Anna for her wonderful presentation today. And we hope to see you all next week. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya. Oh, we just got a question.